Imagine a queen so feared that her name alone could send shivers down your spine. A queen who, in her death, became a curse upon the living. What if I told you that this isn't just a tale, but a reality buried deep in the annals of history? A reality that haunts the very ground you walk on. In the heart of a forgotten kingdom, there once ruled a queen unlike any other. A queen whose legacy was whispered in fear and veiled in shadow. She was known as the Death Queen, a title not given lightly, for her reign was marked by an eerie tranquility, one that came at a price too terrifying to comprehend. The kingdom flourished under her rule, yet it was said that every prosperous harvest, every victorious battle, was bought with a sacrifice, a blood price paid by the queen herself. Her subjects revered her, though they knew little of her true nature. She was a solitary figure, her pale skin almost luminous, eyes as dark as the deepest abyss, and lips stained crimson, as if forever touched by the blood she spilled in secret. The Death Queen, it was rumored, had made a pact with forces beyond this world, trading her soul to protect her people from the horrors lurking just beyond the veil of reality. But as with all things touched by darkness, there came a time when the truth could no longer be contained. It began as a whisper, a rumor that spread like wildfire through the kingdom. A few brave souls, scholars, warriors, and priests, banded together, determined to uncover the secrets of their enigmatic ruler. They delved into ancient texts, consulted with sages, and even ventured into the forbidden forest surrounding the queen's castle. What they discovered was a tale so horrifying that many wished they had left the truth buried. The queen had indeed sacrificed herself, not just once, but repeatedly, to keep the kingdom safe. Each time she would die in agony, her body withering and decaying, only to be reborn from the ashes of her own destruction. The process was excruciating, each death more painful than the last. But the queen endured, for she believed it was her duty, her cursed fate. The scholars found that with each resurrection, the queen's body became less human, and more something else, something that defied the laws of nature, a grotesque amalgamation of life and death. Her flesh, they wrote, had turned cold as ice, her blood black as night, and her touch, her touch was death itself. Driven by a mix of curiosity and dread, the group decided to confront the queen, to question her about the dark pact she had made. They approached her castle with trepidation, the air thick with a sense of impending doom. As they entered the grand hall, they found the queen seated on her throne, as if she had been waiting for them. Her eyes met theirs, and in that moment, they understood the true meaning of fear. The air grew heavy, and a silence fell over the hall so profound, it seemed to swallow all sound. The queen rose, her movements graceful yet unnatural, as if her joints no longer obeyed the rules of flesh and bone. When she spoke, her voice was a mere whisper, yet it echoed through the chamber like a thunderclap. She told them of her sacrifices, of the unspeakable agony she had endured for the sake of her people. She revealed the true nature of her curse, that she was bound to the kingdom, unable to die, unable to rest, until her people were safe from the darkness she had bargained with. But the scholars, in their hubris, demanded more. They insisted on knowing the source of her power, the entity to which she had sold her soul. The queen's expression darkened, and for a moment, the air itself seemed to freeze. She warned them that some knowledge was best left untouched, that their curiosity could bring about their own doom. They didn't listen. In a final act of defiance, one of the scholars reached out to touch the queen, to prove that she was not the monster the legends claimed. As his hand brushed her skin, his face contorted in horror. His flesh began to decay, the rot spreading with terrifying speed. He screamed, but it was already too late. Within seconds, his body collapsed into a pile of bones and ash. Panic ensued. The others tried to flee, but the curse had already taken hold. Each who had touched the scholar in their frantic escape met the same fate, their bodies crumbling to dust as they screamed for mercy. The queen watched in silence, her expression one of sorrow, not anger. She had warned them, but they had chosen their path. Word of the incident spread quickly. Those who survived swore never to speak of the queen again, for fear of invoking her wrath. The kingdom was plunged into a new era of terror, as the curse spread like wildfire. Anyone who dared approach the queen's castle was never seen again, and those who touched even a fragment of her existence were doomed to the same horrific fate. The queen, it is said, still resides in that ancient castle, her body frozen in time, waiting for the day when her people no longer need her protection. But until that day comes, she remains a symbol of death and decay, a reminder that some sacrifices are too great to comprehend. And so, the Death Queen became a legend, her story passed down through generations as a warning. Never seek what should remain hidden, and never touch what belongs to the dead. For in the end, it is not the darkness that should be feared, but the lengths to which one might go to protect the light. The tale of the Death Queen is a haunting reminder that some truths are better left buried, for when unearthed, they have the power to destroy everything in their path. The tale of the Death Queen did not end with the scholar's demise. Rather, it only deepened the mystery and the terror that surrounded her. The kingdom, once prosperous and thriving under her rule, now lay in a shroud of fear and superstition. The castle that was once the heart of the realm became a place of dread, avoided by all who valued their lives. It was said that the very earth around it had turned barren, the trees twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. For years, no one dared to approach the castle. The roads leading to it were swallowed by the encroaching forest, and the once proud banners that adorned its walls were tattered and stained. The queen herself was never seen again, and the kingdom fell into a slow decline, as if her absence had drained the life from the land. But even in the depths of despair, there were those who could not resist the lure of the unknown. Adventurers, treasure hunters, and thrill seekers, all drawn by the promise of uncovering the truth behind the legend, ventured into the cursed forest. None returned. Among them was a young knight named Sarapin, who had heard the tales of the Death Queen since childhood. He was a man of great courage and noble heart, driven by a desire to prove himself worthy of his lineage. Sarapin was not one to be swayed by superstition or fear, and he believed that the legend of the Death Queen was nothing more than a story, exaggerated over time. He set out on his journey with a small band of loyal companions, soldiers, healers, and a scholar who claimed to know the secrets of the ancient texts. They traveled for days through the desolate forest, their path lit only by the flickering light of their torches. The air grew colder the closer they came to the castle, and a sense of unease settled over the group. As they approached the castle gates, they were met with an eerie silence. The wind howled through the broken battlements, and the once majestic doors hung ajar, creaking on their rusted hinges. Sarapin led the way, his sword drawn, his heart pounding in his chest. They entered the great hall, where the queen had once held court, only to find it empty and covered in a thick layer of dust. The silence was deafening. Every step they took echoed through the empty corridors, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. The deeper they ventured into the castle, the more the air seemed to thicken, as if they were walking through a fog of dread. Finally, they reached the throne room. There, in the center of the chamber, stood the throne, a grand ancient seat carved from black stone, and on that throne sat the queen. She was not as the legends had described her. Her body was unnaturally still, her skin pale and translucent like the finest porcelain. Her eyes were closed, and her hands rested on the arms of the throne, as if she had simply fallen asleep. But there was no mistaking the aura of death that surrounded her. Sarapin hesitated, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. The scholar at his side whispered warnings, urging him to leave, to turn back before it was too late. But Sarapin was determined. He stepped forward, calling out to the queen, hoping for some response, some sign of life. There was none. But as he approached, something strange began to happen. The air grew colder, and a faint, almost imperceptible sound filled the room, a low, mournful wail that seemed to come from all around them. The queen's eyes slowly opened, revealing orbs as black as night, void of any light or warmth. Sarapin froze, his breath caught in his throat. The queen's gaze was like a physical force pinning him in place. And then she spoke. Not with her lips, but with a voice that echoed in his mind, a voice filled with centuries of pain and sorrow.
"Why have you come?" the voice asked, cold and distant, as if coming from the very depths of the earth. Sarapin struggled to find his voice, but when he did, it was weak and trembling. "I seek the truth," he said, "the truth of your legend, of the curse that plagues this land." The queen's gaze did not waver, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, anger, or perhaps sadness. "The truth is a burden you cannot bear," she said. "Leave this place while you still can." But Sarapin was not deterred. He demanded to know the nature of the curse, the price she had paid for the safety of the kingdom. He wanted to know if there was a way to lift the curse, to free the land from its grip. The queen's expression darkened. "There is no freedom from this curse," she whispered. "It is bound to me, as I am bound to this throne. My sacrifices have tied my soul to this place to protect the kingdom from a greater darkness, but in doing so, I have become that darkness. The curse is my penance, my punishment for the choices I made." The room grew colder still, and the mournful wail grew louder, as if the very walls of the castle were weeping. Sarapin felt a chill run down his spine, but he pressed on. He asked if there was any way to end the curse, to free the queen from her eternal torment. For a moment there was silence. Then, the queen's voice returned, softer now, almost pleading. "There is one way," she said. "But it requires a sacrifice greater than any before, one that will end not just the curse, but the very existence of this kingdom. It is a price no one should have to pay." Sarapin's heart sank. He realized then that there was no victory to be had, no glory to be won. The curse was not just the queen's burden, but the burden of the entire kingdom, a curse that could only be ended by its complete destruction. The scholar beside him whispered in horror, urging them to leave, to abandon this doomed place. But Sarapin hesitated. He looked at the queen, at the sorrow in her eyes, and knew that she longed for release, for an end to her suffering. He weighed the cost in his mind, the lives of the people, the future of the kingdom, all balanced against the curse that had plagued them for centuries. Before he could speak, the queen's voice cut through the silence once more. "Leave now," she commanded, "and never return. The truth you sought is not one that can save you. It will only bring ruin." Sarapin knew she was right. With a heavy heart, he turned to leave, motioning for his companions to follow. But as they reached the doorway, the queen's voice echoed in his mind one final time.
"Remember this night. The darkness I kept at bay still lingers. If you disturb it, the curse will rise again, stronger than before. Leave this place and let it fade into oblivion, where it belongs." Sarapin nodded, his resolve shattered. He led his companions out of the castle, leaving the queen to her eternal vigil. As they emerged into the daylight, the castle seemed to sink further into the ground, as if trying to bury itself and the horrors within. The group made their way back through the forest, their hearts heavy with the knowledge they had gained. They swore an oath never to speak of what they had seen, to let the legend of the Death Queen fade into obscurity. The kingdom, they decided, would be better off forgetting the truth, living in blissful ignorance of the darkness that had been held at bay for so long. But even as they left the cursed land behind, the weight of their discovery lingered. The scholar, who had been so eager to uncover the truth, became withdrawn, haunted by nightmares of the queen's eyes, of the decaying touch that had claimed the lives of those before him. Sarapin, too, was changed. He could not shake the feeling that they had left something undone, that the darkness the queen had spoken of was not as dormant as she had hoped. He feared that one day, the curse would rise again, and that the kingdom would not be prepared to face it. Years passed, and the story of the Death Queen faded from memory, becoming nothing more than a ghost story told to frighten children. But those who knew the truth, the descendants of Sarapin and his companions, kept a silent vigil, watching the land for signs of the curse's return. And then, one fateful night, the ground beneath the old castle rumbled, and a dark mist began to seep from the earth, spreading like a plague. The curse had returned, stronger and more insidious than before. The descendants of those who had once sought the truth knew that they could not fight it alone. They gathered what little knowledge they had, the old texts, the warnings passed down through generations, and prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of the kingdom. But they knew that this time there would be no queen to protect them, no ancient power to hold the darkness at bay. The curse had come for them, and they could only hope that they were strong enough to face it. The final battle for the kingdom was about to begin, and with it, the last chapter in the legend of the Death Queen. In the end, the story of the Death Queen was not just a tale of sacrifice and suffering, but a reminder of the dangers of seeking knowledge that was never meant to be uncovered. It was a warning, passed down through the ages, that some mysteries are better left unsolved, and that the price of curiosity can be far greater than one could ever imagine. The Death Queen may have been forgotten by history, but her curse lived on, a shadow that would haunt the kingdom for all eternity. And as the descendants of those who had once sought the truth stood at the edge of the dark forest, they knew that their only hope was to let the past remain buried, to let the Death Queen's sacrifice be the final word in a story that was never meant to be told.